We are sewing MCALLS 6474. Now we're gonna move on to view F, which is the pants. I'm so excited about these because we're gonna make them in only 7 steps. So super quick, super easy pants. And we already have everything cut out. So go ahead and grab, so for your notions for the pants, you're gonna need some 3/4 inch elastic. So I have that here. And that's it for your notions. So go ahead and grab your pants pieces. That's gonna be piece 7 and 8. Piece 7 is the front and piece 8 is the back. I have put a little chalk line here so that I know this is piece 8, which is my back. And I've also put a pin in the front so that I know which side is the right side, so I don't get confused when I go to put these together. So the first thing that we're gonna do, and the directions do say to double stitch all the seams. So if you wanna just use your serger to knock this out, you feel free to do so. So I'm gonna grab one of each piece of the front and the back, and we're gonna stitch them together at the inner leg. So I'm gonna grab one of piece 7. I'm gonna set the other one aside. Again, piece 7 is our front. I'm gonna turn it to the right side. So I see my pin here. So I know that I'm on the right side of piece 7. And so I need to grab the piece 8 that corresponds with piece 7 when we are working with the inner leg seam. So it's not gonna be that one. It's gonna be this one. So this is our pin. We know that's the right side of piece 8. And when you flip that, right side's facing with piece 7, we have our crotches lining up, which is exactly what we want. So once you have that matched up, we're gonna go ahead and pin at our inner leg seam all the way down to the bottom of these pants. And you wanna make sure that you're matching your notches as you go. And I'm gonna go ahead and line up the ends or the bottoms and pin. And then I'm gonna kind of make sure that everything in between is evenly spaced. I'm gonna put just a few more pins in place here. Like so. And once we have that pinned, again, we are working on one leg at a time. We're gonna go to our machine and we're gonna stitch from the bottom all the way to the top using a zigzag stitch at 5/8 of an inch. And then you're gonna double stitch. So you're gonna stitch again from the bottom to the top about 1/4 of an inch away, or use your serger to do your stitching. So now set that leg aside. We're gonna pin our second leg together the same way, and then we're gonna go over to the machine and stitch our inner leg seams. Okay, so we're at the sewing machine and we're gonna, again, stitch from the bottom to the top of our pants, inner leg seam using 5/8 inch seam allowance as well as a zigzag stitch. Make sure to back stitch. So go ahead and stitch your other inner leg seam the same way. And then you're gonna come back, if you're using your sewing machine, line up your presser foot with your first row of stitching. And then, let's see if I can show that better. Line up your presser foot with your first row of stitching and then stitch again in the seam allowance all the way up. If you have a serger, go ahead and serge your second row of stitching and then finish off these seams with your serger or your pinking shears, and then do the same thing on the other leg. And then we'll meet back at the sewing table. Okay, so once you have finished off that seam and pressed it, next thing we're gonna do is sew together our side seams. So again, working with one pants leg at a time. We're going to pin together, again with the right sides of the front and back facing each other. We're going to pin that in place. Okay. I'm just matching everything up all the way down, matching your notches. Cha-cha-cha. And I already pinned at the bottom to make sure everything in the middle is even. And we're just gonna keep pinning that. Okay, we have one leg pinned. We're gonna go ahead and do the other leg the same way. And what I want you guys to do when we get to the sewing machine, we're gonna start again from the bottom, work our way all the way up to the top, and then we're gonna double stitch that again. So the same way we did with either your serger or a 1/4 of an inch away from the first stitching, just to reinforce that stitch. So go ahead and finish pinning your second leg and then meet me at the sewing machine. So here we are. We're gonna go ahead and get ready to stitch this side seam in place. Make sure you're on a zigzag stitch, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and make sure you're checking your bobbin thread. With these long side seam and inner leg seams, sometimes you run out of thread. So let's go ahead and back stitch. and back stitch. All right. So again, go ahead and do your second row of stitches or finish this on your serger and then meet me back at the sewing table. Oh, I forgot to mention, go ahead and stitch your other leg side seam the same way and then meet me back at the sewing table. Okay guys, so once we have stitched the side seams of our pants, we should have 2 separate pants legs. And I emphasize that because you want to make sure it's 2 separate pants legs. So next thing we're going to do is work on our crotch seam. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to turn one of our pants legs right side out. So just like this. Keep the other one wrong side out. So one of them you should see the seams and one of them you should not. We can go ahead and remove our placeholder pins because now we know which side is right side and which one is not. And we're gonna take that leg that we turned right side out and we're gonna slip it into the leg that is turned wrong side out. And we're gonna line up the tops, crotches. So hopefully that didn't confuse you. Again, the pants leg that we turned right side out, let me take it back out. So we have one leg that is wrong side out. We can see the seam. We have the other leg that we have turned right side out. We cannot see the seam. And we're gonna take that leg with the seam in place and we're gonna slip it inside of the pants leg that is turned wrong sides out. We're gonna try our best to keep the seams lined up because that'll just make it easier. So basically once you have this in place, it's gonna look like one big pants leg, but it's actually 2. And you know, just straighten that as best you can. But the main thing we're doing here is working on our crotch. So this is our crotch. And we're going to make sure that we're lining up those seams. So essentially when you're stitching this, it's gonna be stitching right sides together of your pants. So we're gonna begin to pin, matching our notches. And this whole thing is our crotch right here. We're gonna pin all the way up to the top. Again, matching our notches. You have a single notch at the top and a double notch closer to the center. And that part is pinned. Now I'm gonna turn this around so that we can easily access and pin the other side the same way. So I'm gonna start at the top here and pin. And I'm gonna continue pinning down. Match the single notch here. And then I'm gonna pin one more time. And this is the center. So now that we have that pin, we're gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm gonna stitch from one side all the way along the crotch to the other side. And then we're gonna double stitch it again like we've been doing with all the other seams. So let's go ahead and head to the sewing machine. Okay, so again, we're using a zigzag stitch, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Doesn't really matter which side of the crotch you start on. You're just gonna go from the top through the middle into the other side. Make sure to back stitch. you're gonna slow down as you approach the crotch because it's a little thicker with those seams in place. To the other side and back stitch. All right, so now go ahead and complete your second row of stitches or use your serger, and then meet me back at the sewing table. Okay, so once we have that crotch seam stitch, we're going to pull out the other pants leg so that both pants legs are wrong sides out. So you should be looking at the seams of everything, so the inside of the pants. And so the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna make our casing for our elastic. And I didn't mark mine. I had some notches here that obviously got removed once I serged this together. We can take a quick measurement here. So I see that the fold line is about 1.25 inches from the raw edge. So I'm going to use that measurement, and that makes sense because that was the same measurement for the hem of our tunic. So I'm going to turn inward 1.25 inches on my pants. And I'm gonna put a pin in the back just so that I don't lose track of where the back is in the front. So I'm just gonna fold down randomly, and then I'm gonna grab my seam gauge and I'm gonna take a real measurement at 1.25 inches. And then I'm gonna pin close to the fold here. And I'm just gonna go all the way around, measuring out that 1.25 inches. And pinning at the fold. If you watched the sew along for the tunic, this is pretty much the same thing that we did with the tunic as well. So it should look very familiar. So I'm gonna gently flip these pants over, and we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. So once you have that pinned, go ahead and come back and we'll go to the next step. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to finish off the raw edge. I could have done this before I pinned my seam allowance, and I probably, well, pinned my seam, and I probably should have, but I forgot. I'm gonna be very honest with you. So this is the time to either serge the raw edge or use your pinking shears, or you can just leave it raw. But I'm gonna go ahead and serge this and then come right back. Okay, so now that I have that finished, we're gonna go to our sewing machine on the wrong side, and we're gonna stitch very close to the raw edge here at the bottom. And then we're also gonna stitch close to the fold. At the bottom, we're gonna leave an opening so that we can feed our elastic through that casing, but at the top, we're not gonna leave an opening. So again, at the bottom, leave about a 1 inch opening at your side seam. And you may just wanna like take a couple pins and pin about a 1 inch space just so that you don't forget, like that. But we're gonna stitch close to the edge at the bottom and then stitch all the way around at the top. and we're going to use a straight stitch for that. Okay, so again, on the wrong side of the pants, so I should be looking at my waistband, I am going to stitch using a straight stitch along the raw edge, so just a little bit inside of the raw edge, and make sure to back stitch. And we're going to come all the way back around, making sure to leave a 1-inch opening at our side seam so that we can insert our elastic later. And technically, this is lining up at about 1 inch on the seam gauge. So we're going to back stitch at that point. And we can remove those pins. And again, this is the lower edge of our casing. So right here, you should have an opening so that we can insert our elastic. So now that we have that bottom part stitched, we're going to go and we're going to start again at a side seam, and we're just gonna stitch again at the very top near the fold. So drop down your needle, again straight stitch, and we're just stitching very close to the folded edge. Slow down when you get to your seam. You may have to slightly pull just a little bit. at the top, we're not leaving an opening. We're just going all the way to where we started. So now we have our casing formed, as you can see here. So let's go ahead and go back over to the sewing table and start getting ready to insert our elastic. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to grab our elastic and we're gonna cut off your waist measurement plus 1 inch. So if you have not, go ahead and get your tape measure, measure your waist real quick. Okay, so my current waist measurement is 33.5, so I'm gonna measure out 34.5 inches of elastic for my pants. That way they're nice and comfy. Just gonna get my measuring tape, lay that out like so. And I'm actually gonna mark this with my chalk first. 34.5. Then I'm gonna cut right there. Okay. So now I can put the rest of my elastic away. And here we are. So before you put that in your pants, wrap that around your waist and make sure that you're accurate. And I just did, and I feel good about it. So next thing we're gonna do is grab our handy dandy trusty safety pin, which I never keep too far away. And you're gonna put that safety pin through your elastic and fasten it. And then we're gonna find, this is with the pants still wrong side out, we're gonna find that opening that we left. And then we're gonna put that elastic right through that opening. We're gonna start to feed that through our casing. And you wanna do the best you can to keep it like stable, to keep it facing the same way. You don't want your elastic to get all twisted and bunched up, because then your waistband won't look good. And we want a good looking waistband, so. Just continue to feed that through as you go. You want to make sure you keep the end of your safety pin closed, because the last thing you want is for that thing to come open. Then you're in trouble. So that's looking good so far. Just gonna keep feeding that through. Keep feeding, keep feeding. So as you get closer and closer, what you want to do with the other side of your elastic, because you don't want it to snap to the inside of your pants casing, is take another safety pin, pin it through, and pin it to your garment. So that's going to prevent it from slipping onto the inside and us losing our elastic, which has happened to me before. It's not fun. And then if you can't fish it out, you got to start all over again. And nobody wants to do that, right? Okay, so we're just distributing some of the fullness as we go, continuing to feed through and pull, move it, making sure nothing is too bunched again as we go. And we are almost back to where we started, which is amazing. Y'all, these pants are so quick and so easy. I absolutely love them. Okay, so here we are, back where we started. I'm just gonna pull that elastic. And so now I'm gonna take one pin out, and then I'm gonna take our other pin and I'm gonna join these two and overlap them by about half an inch. Well, about an inch on both sides. And then we're just gonna distribute this evenly all around our waistband. I wouldn't recommend like any severe pulling, just so we make sure that nothing gets lost or twisted or bunched up with our waistband. Okay. We are having a little bit of twisting there. I don't know why that's going on, but I'm just gonna use my finger to smooth that out. Okay. Okay, so now is the time that we're gonna try these on and make sure that they fit. So go ahead and try your pants on. And make sure they fit, and then come back. Okay, so I tried my pants on. I'm very happy with how they fit. So now that that is done, we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna stitch. And again, make sure you take a little time to make sure your waistband is straight all the way around. Because once you stitch this elastic, that's game over. So take a few minutes, straighten that out if you haven't, and then we're literally gonna lap the elastic just like this. Again, about an inch. And then we're gonna zigzag stitch across at the sewing machine, and that's just gonna keep that elastic in place how it needs to be. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so if you haven't, go ahead and switch over to a zigzag stitch. Pull your elastic gently out of the casing. just so that we have enough room to work on stitching it. But again, make sure it does not get twisted. I can't emphasize that enough, just because it just won't be good. Okay, so go ahead and put your elastic doubled over under your needle and drop your needle down. And then keeping that nice and flat, we're gonna go ahead and stitch, zigzag stitch and back stitch. And then we're gonna stitch all the way down the length of the elastic and stitch back. So just hold your back stitch down, stitch all the way back, and stitch all the way forward and back one more time. Okay. And that's just gonna really reinforce that elastic so it does not pop on you. Yeah, flip it to the inside like so. And now you can kind of pull and on the waistband, distribute the fullness. And make sure you do that before we do the next step, because you don't want it to be like flat in places and then bunched in places. So just pull just a little bit. And so we're gonna stitch this closed now as well, is that we're going to join our initial casing stitching on both sides with a straight stitch, making sure that the elastic is pushed out of the way. So line your needle up with the casing stitching that we did initially, and we're gonna again push that elastic out of the way. We're gonna back stitch, and we're gonna stitch all the way over to the other side and join that stitching together. You may need to slightly pull on your fabric, just so slightly, and then back stitch. And we have closed off our casing, so now there's no more opening. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go in again with a straight stitch into our side seams. And this step is just to prevent our elastic from bunching up as we wear the pants. We're gonna stitch in the ditch right along our side seams through the elastic. And that's just gonna keep that in place, keep it from bunching up and twisting. So back stitch, and then stitch and back stitch. Okay, so that should look like this. This is our side seam. And then we're gonna go to our other side seam. We're gonna do the same thing. So now when we wear these, our elastic should stay in place. So y'all, we are pretty much done with these pants. We are gonna go to the sewing table and get our hems ready, and then we will be done. All right, guys, so we're finishing these pants hems the same way that we did our tunic. So go ahead and turn your pants wrong side out. And let's see, we're using another 1 1/4 inch hem for our pants, which sounds familiar, right? So the way we're gonna do this, or the way I would like to do this, is I'm gonna go to my serger, or again, you can leave this raw, and I'm just gonna serge the bottoms of these pants, and then we're gonna come back and turn up 1 1/4 for our hem. Okay, so I finished the raw edges with the serger, Now we're going to grab our seam gauge and we're going to turn up 1 1/4 on our pants. And pin close to the fold. All right, so go ahead and pin your other leg the same way, and then I'll let you know how we're going to do this hem. Okay, so the way that we're going to finish off this hem is we're going to baste. So grab your thread. You can baste on the machine, but it's really hard to remove machine basting, if you ask me. So I just like to hand baste it. And I'm just going to use my needle and thread about 1/2 inch from the raw edge to baste that hem in place. And if you want, you can take more than 1 stitch to make it go a little bit faster. I'm actually using a knitting needle, and that's really just because this is a waffle knit, so it's so loosely woven that I'm not going to damage my fabric. If it were anything else, I would be using a little tiny needle for this. So I'm just turning this as I go. And you want to make sure that you're not pulling too tightly when you're doing these stitches. They're very loose basting stitches because you don't want to like gather your fabric like how I just did right there. So I'm going to leave that, and then I'm going to pull a loose to keep those stitches very loose. So I'm going to leave my pins in place and my basting in place. So go ahead and baste your other leg the same way, and then we're going to go over to the sewing machine. We're going to turn our pants right side out, and we're going to top stitch along the basting, which is going to be about a 1 inch seam allowance on your seam gauge. So go ahead and do that, and then meet me at the sewing machine. Okay, so we're at the sewing machine. I have ever so gently turned my pants to the outside. So you see I have my basting stitch. I still have my pins in place, keeping that fold as well, as you can see. So we're gonna use a twin needle here again. Again, if you do not know how to use a twin needle, I'm gonna link my video for that here. It's not very difficult, but that will allow you to have a really great finish on your knitwear. So, okay, so I'm gonna start at one seam, side seam, well, one seam of my pants. Again, using my twin needle and stitching along that basting, which is about 1 inch of seam allowance. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop down my twin needle. I'm gonna back stitch, and I'm gonna stitch all the way around. 1 inch. Making sure that my seam stays flat underneath. And we're coming back to where we started and back stitch. Okay, so that is it for part 1, side 1 of our pants. I'm gonna go ahead and remove my pins. Also gonna remove my basting stitches. And voila, we have a nicely finished twin needle hem. So go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Press this out to remove any like lumpy bumpiness, and then meet me back at the sewing table. All right, guys, so we are done. Once you have trimmed any threads or pressed out your seams and your hems at the bottom, then that's it. Your pants are completely done, and you should have a beautiful tunic as well as pants, set of pajamas that you can wear just in time for the holidays. All right, you guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this so long. Thank you for joining me today. Be blessed, and until next time, I will see you later.